In just the first 6 months of this year, more than 187,000 American homes received a foreclosure filing, the highest mid-year total since 2019. And the wave is accelerating. Behind the headlines about rising home prices and soft landings, a quiet reckoning is spreading through the housing market. Families who stretched to buy during the pandemic boom are now facing the harsh math of higher mortgage rates, record property taxes, and shrinking paychecks. From Illinois to Florida and South Carolina, foreclosure signs are reappearing on front lawns once thought safe from the chaos of 2008. Banks are repossessing homes faster than they have in years. Neighborhoods that once symbolized stability are slipping back into crisis. Stay with me until we reach number 3, where one city's foreclosure rate has surged more than 70% in a single year, a warning that the next American housing collapse may have already begun. Because these 10 cities are the fault lines of an economy under unbearable pressure. Columbia, the capital of South Carolina, was never supposed to be a warning sign. For decades, it represented the quiet stability of the Southern middle class. Affordable homes, reliable jobs, and a low cost of living that shielded families from the chaos of coastal markets. But in 2025, that shield cracked. According to the latest data, 1 in every 683 homes in Columbia has entered foreclosure, one of the highest rates in the entire nation. That's not a typo. It means entire neighborhoods where nearly every street has at least one house in distress. Behind those numbers are stories that sound painfully familiar: rising insurance premiums, property taxes that outpace wages, and mortgage resets that added hundreds of dollars overnight. For many homeowners, a single missed paycheck was all it took to start the countdown toward losing everything. The local economy hasn't been spared either. South Carolina's job market is tightening as manufacturing and construction slow down. And with housing affordability collapsing, the ripple effect is spreading into local businesses, restaurants, supply companies, and contractors, all feeling the pinch. Drive just 15 minutes outside downtown, and you'll find developments that were half built before financing dried up. Empty frames of wood and steel standing like monuments to optimism gone wrong. Yet the real warning isn't just Columbia's foreclosure rate. It's how quickly it appeared. In barely 12 months, filings surged more than 50%, outpacing both Florida and Illinois. Economists call it a localized correction. But for the families packing boxes, it feels like collapse. Still, the most chilling part? Columbia's story isn't unique. It's the opening chapter. Because across America, small to mid-sized metros like this are breaking first. Before the nation's largest markets follow, stay with me, because the next city on this list sits just a few hundred miles south, where foreclosures are spreading through the Sunshine State like wildfire. Halfway between Tampa and Orlando, Lakeland was once Florida's promise of affordable living, a refuge for families priced out of Miami and the Gulf Coast. But in 2025, that promise collapsed. According to the latest data reports, 1 in every 470 homes in the Lakeland metro area entered foreclosure, the highest rate in the entire nation among metros with at least 200,000 residents. No other American city is losing homes this fast. Behind the numbers lies a perfect economic storm: spiking insurance premiums, rising property taxes, and mortgage rates that doubled since the pandemic boom. For years, out-of-state investors and retirees poured into Central Florida, driving prices up by more than 40% in less than 3 years. But the surge created a fragile market built on borrowed money and thin margins. And now, it's breaking. Local homeowners describe an unbearable squeeze. In some neighborhoods, annual insurance premiums now top $5,000, higher than their property taxes. Many bought at record-high prices with adjustable-rate mortgages, never imagining that just 2 years later, their monthly payments would jump by hundreds of dollars. Real estate agents say entire subdivisions are covered in for sale and foreclosure signs. Banks are accelerating repossessions, and investors who once flipped houses for profit are now abandoning them altogether. Even major developers have halted new projects mid-construction, waiting for the fallout to settle. Lakeland's collapse isn't just a local story. It's a warning to the rest of Florida. Cape Coral, Ocala, and Jacksonville are already showing the same early tremors. And statewide, Florida now has the highest foreclosure rate in America, 1 in every 814 homes. compared to the national average of 1 in every 1,402. For a state built on migration and optimism, that reversal is stunning. The dream that Florida never falls is starting to look like one of the biggest myths in American housing. But the story doesn't end here. It gets worse, out west, into California's Central Valley, where another storm is forming, and the numbers are even more alarming. Florida's collapse was the signal. California's is the storm. In the heart of the Central Valley sits Bakersfield, a city once known for oil rigs, country music, and endless sunshine. But in 2025, that sunshine is casting shadows over one of the state's fastest-rising foreclosure crises. According to the latest data, 1 in every 580 homes in Bakersfield received a foreclosure filing this year, a sharp climb that places it among the top 10 metros nationwide. For a region that prided itself on affordable housing, the spike is shocking. The collapse started quietly. When the pandemic housing boom spread inland, buyers flooded Bakersfield for lower prices, driving home values up more than 50% between 2020 and 2023. But what followed was a brutal correction. Rising mortgage rates, surging property insurance costs, and layoffs in construction and logistics combined to squeeze thousands of households past their limits. Today, neighborhoods once filled with first-time buyers are scattered with foreclosure notices. Some homeowners who refinanced at record low rates during the boom are now trapped, unable to sell without taking a loss. Others who bought at the peak simply walked away. Local officials warn that the crisis is deeper than the statistics suggest. Foreclosure filings represent only the visible layer. Beneath it lies a wave of delinquent loans and forbearance extensions quietly expiring. By the time those numbers appear in public reports, it may already be too late. The human toll is unmistakable. Drive through the western suburbs and you'll find half-finished housing tracts, streets lined with for sale signs, and silence where construction crews once worked. Even the city's industrial base, oil, agriculture, and distribution, is feeling the strain as higher borrowing costs ripple through the economy. Economists describe Bakersfield as a microcosm of California's affordability disaster, where working-class families were priced out of the coastal dream and into debt they can no longer sustain. If this trend continues, California's Central Valley could become the epicenter of the state's next housing collapse. But the warning doesn't stop here. Because just south of Bakersfield, in a city famous for endless freeways and record migration, the foreclosure surge has started to hit on an even larger scale. Just 2 hours south of Bakersfield, the same story is repeating. Only louder, faster, and with far higher stakes. Riverside, once the pride of Southern California's inland expansion, is now one of the epicenters of the state's foreclosure surge. In 2025, 1 in every 550 homes in the Riverside metropolitan area received a foreclosure filing, a rate more than twice the national average. It's a brutal reversal for a region that, not long ago, symbolized the dream of owning a California home without the Los Angeles price tag. The seeds of collapse were planted during the pandemic boom. As buyers fled coastal cities, Riverside became the escape valve. Suburban developments spread across the desert, fueled by low interest rates and speculative lending. Between 2019 and 2022, median home prices skyrocketed by nearly 60%. But when mortgage rates doubled, that dream turned into a debt trap. Families who stretched to afford new homes now face monthly payments that jumped by $800 or more. Add California's record insurance premiums and one of the nation's highest property tax burdens, and the foundation crumbles fast. On the ground, the collapse feels visible. Drive through Moreno Valley, Corona, or San Bernardino, and you'll see rows of homes half renovated, half empty, waiting for auctions that may never come. Developers are mothballing projects mid-frame. Lenders are tightening credit as defaults spread across the Inland Empire. But this isn't just a local housing story. It's an economic one. The Inland Empire's warehouses and logistics centers, once the heartbeat of America's supply chain, are slowing down. Freight volumes are dropping, layoffs are spreading, and those same workers are among the first to fall behind on their mortgages. Economists now call Riverside a canary in the coal mine, the city where America's next housing downturn is showing its teeth first. When foreclosures rise here, the rest of the country tends to follow 6 months later. The question isn't whether Riverside's market will recover. It's whether the damage can be contained. Because if these foreclosure waves keep pushing westward, California's crisis could soon pull the rest of the nation back into housing chaos. And that's already happening in a city thousands of miles away, where rising crime and collapsing budgets are fueling an even darker economic unraveling. In California, the collapse crept through cul-de-sacs and suburbs. In Chicago, it's echoing through towers of glass and brick. The Windy City has become the unexpected ground zero of the nation's foreclosure machine, not because of a housing boom gone wrong, but because of an economy quietly bleeding from the inside out. According to ATTOM's third quarter report, Chicago recorded more foreclosure starts than any other metropolitan area in the United States. Thousands of properties entering default in just a few months. That's not a regional anomaly. It's a structural failure. For decades, Chicago's vast housing stock was its strength. Millions of affordable single-family homes stretching from Cook County to the outer suburbs. But in 2025, those same homes have become liabilities, aging, overtaxed, and too expensive to insure. Property taxes here are among the highest in the country, and combined with rising interest rates, many longtime owners have simply given up. It's not just homeowners falling behind. In neighborhoods once defined by working-class stability, landlords are defaulting too, leaving renters in limbo. Entire apartment blocks sit half-empty, windows dark, mail piling up behind locked doors. City officials frame it as a temporary market correction. But the data tells another story. In some parts of Chicago's south and west sides, foreclosure filings have jumped by more than 60% since last year. And unlike past cycles, this time the rebound isn't coming. Violent crime, commercial flight, and collapsing retail corridors are draining the tax base faster than it can be replaced. Each empty home becomes a symbol of a larger unraveling, a city losing both residents and revenue. And every foreclosure deepens the fiscal hole as property values sink and maintenance costs rise. The danger isn't isolated to Chicago alone. When a city this large, the economic anchor of the Midwest, begins to slip, the shockwaves spread outward. Suburbs, once seen as stable, are now watching their own delinquency rates climb, while regional banks brace for higher loan losses. Chicago's skyline still gleams at night, but beneath it lies an urban economy fraying under impossible pressure. And just a few states away, that same pattern is starting to repeat, this time in the heart of America's energy capital. For years, Houston was the symbol of limitless growth, a city that believed it could build forever. No zoning laws, no boundaries, no hesitation, just freeways stretching to the horizon and subdivisions blooming out of the prairie like mirages. But in 2025, that boundless expansion has turned into a debt trap. According to new data, 1 in every 610 homes in the Houston metro has entered foreclosure, the city's highest rate in more than a decade. And it's not just homeowners. It's developers, landlords, and small business owners all getting caught in the same undertow. Houston's economy was built on energy, and when oil prices slipped this spring, the shock rippled instantly through payrolls and property markets. Thousands of workers tied to the petroleum supply chain faced layoffs or reduced hours. At the same time, rising insurance, premiums, and property tax reassessments hit families already stretched by adjustable rate mortgages. In the newer suburbs north of the Beltway, freshly built homes now sit half-occupied. Streetlights flicker over cul-de-sacs where only a few windows are still lit. Developers call them paused communities. Locals call them something darker, reminders of 2008. But Houston's vulnerability runs deeper than real estate. This is a city financed on optimism, cheap credit, constant migration, endless construction. When the optimism fades, the math doesn't work. Mortgage delinquencies are up double digits year over year. Commercial lenders report rising defaults on warehouse and retail space. And local banks, once flush with energy profits, are now tightening loans, fearing another regional collapse. For the families inside the numbers, it's personal. A missed payment becomes a notice. A notice becomes a lock on the door. And soon, the dream of homeownership in the nation's fourth largest city feels like another illusion of cheap oil and easy credit. Economists warn that Houston's slowdown could be the blueprint for what happens when America's fastest-growing cities hit their limits. The same pattern of rapid expansion, debt-driven growth, and insurance-inflated risk is spreading across the Sunbelt. And the next stop lies on the opposite side of the Gulf, in a city built on tourism, speculation, and seawalls that can't hold back economic tides forever. If Houston's collapse is built on sand and debt, Miami's is built on water and denial. Here, the ocean creeps closer every year, not just to the shorelines, but to the balance sheets. In 2025, 1 in every 650 homes in the Miami metropolitan area received a foreclosure filing, the highest for any major coastal city in America. But this time, the crisis isn't driven by speculative loans or builder frenzy. It's insurance. South Florida's insurers have fled in record numbers, and those who remain have doubled or tripled premiums. In some neighborhoods, annual policies now exceed $10,000. For many homeowners, that's more than their mortgage itself. So they stop paying, first the insurance, then the taxes, and finally, the loan. The banks can't stop it. The government won't. And the ocean doesn't care. On the ground, the collapse feels like humidity that never leaves, invisible but suffocating. Condominium towers shimmer in the sun, but behind the tinted glass, foreclosure notices are piling up. Luxury investors who once flipped ocean view penthouses for profit are dumping properties at losses. Middle-class families who bought inland are discovering that affordable doesn't mean safe. In places like Hialeah and Homestead, foreclosure filings have more than doubled since last year. Entire condo associations are in crisis as unpaid maintenance fees push buildings toward bankruptcy. Developers are halting projects mid-rise, waiting for an insurance market that may never return. The emotional toll is as stark as the financial one. For decades, Miami was marketed as the reward for ambition, the final stop for those who made it. Now it's becoming a warning. Paradise is only affordable until the next storm arrives. And every hurricane season, the fear grows, not of wind, but of the letter that follows. A notice, a default, a loss. Economists call Miami's unraveling the climate premium collapse. The moment environmental risk finally outpriced human optimism. It's no longer about rising seas. It's about sinking equity. And if this can happen in America's most desirable coastal market, what chance do smaller, colder, forgotten cities have when the tide of debt reaches them next? If Miami is sinking into water, Cleveland is sinking into time. The city once forged America's backbone, steel, machinery, and the promise of work that lasted a lifetime. But in 2025, the hum of industry has faded to a whisper, and what remains is debt echoing through hollow factories. According to Attom's latest figures, 1 in every 670 homes in the Cleveland metropolitan area faced foreclosure this year, one of the highest rates in the Midwest. That number tells only part of the story. The collapse here isn't sudden, it's cumulative. Each decade stripped another layer of resilience. Manufacturing jobs vanished, population declined, tax bases shrank, and the cost of maintaining aging infrastructure kept climbing. By the time inflation hit and mortgage rates doubled, thousands of families were already one missed paycheck from default. In neighborhoods east of downtown, rows of century-old houses stand half-boarded, their paint flaking like rust. Banks list them for pennies, but no one is buying. Insurance premiums have risen, yet property values have fallen, an equation no economy can survive. Local officials speak of revitalization corridors, but the cranes never arrive. Developers hesitate. Lenders demand impossible collateral. Even the industrial sites, once slated for clean energy conversions, sit dormant, reminders that economic reinvention is easier to announce than to fund. The human side of the crisis is quieter here, but heavier. Retirees trying to outlast adjustable rate increases. Younger families forced into short sales before foreclosure hits. Landlords surrendering multi-unit homes to banks rather than face another winter of empty apartments. In the suburbs, where hope used to move after the city fell, the contagion is spreading. Cuyahoga County recorded its highest foreclosure filings since 2014. Local credit unions report delinquency rates rising month after month. And still, wages stagnate while essentials climb. Economists describe Cleveland as a slow bleed, not the dramatic crash of coastal markets, but the steady loss of economic oxygen. It's a different kind of collapse, one that doesn't explode, it erodes. Yet what's happening here matters beyond Ohio. Because when the industrial heart of America begins to hollow out again, it signals something larger, that the country's economic core is aging faster than it can rebuild. And farther south, in a city once celebrated for strength, sunshine, and resilience, that erosion has taken on an entirely different form, one measured in despair, not debt. For years, San Antonio was the Sun Belt success story, a city where growth felt endless and affordable dreams seemed within reach. But by 2025, the very boom that made it shine has started to crush the people who built it. According to the latest foreclosure report, 1 in every 650 homes in the San Antonio metro received a foreclosure filing this year, the city's steepest housing distress since 2010. And behind that number is a paradox. Population still rising, prosperity falling. Between 2020 and 2024, more than 200,000 new residents moved to the metro, chasing cheaper homes and jobs spilling south from Austin. Developers paved ranch land into subdivisions almost overnight. But the infrastructure and the paychecks couldn't keep up. Average home prices have jumped 48% since the pandemic. Median household income barely moved at all. Every new family that arrived to find opportunity found the same thing locals were already facing: property tax hikes, insurance premiums doubling, and starter home prices vanishing. The result is an affordability collapse disguised as growth. Mortgage delinquencies are up 26% year over year. Foreclosure auctions at the Bexar County Courthouse now spill onto the sidewalk, and the neighborhoods once marketed as affordable sanctuaries are becoming silent rows of for sale signs. Developers call it a cooling phase. Economists call it a correction. But to residents losing homes they bought only 2 years ago, it feels like betrayal. On the city's west side, entire new build communities sit half-finished, streets without lights, driveways without buyers. Construction companies have paused projects mid-frame as financing dries up. Meanwhile, investors who bought 3 or 4 houses at peak price are walking away, leaving empty shells to bake under the Texas sundae. This isn't the recession of 2008 repeating. It's the backlash of a population boom too large for its foundation. When tens of thousands move to escape high costs elsewhere, the low-cost city eventually becomes just another expensive one, only without the wages or infrastructure to support it. And in San Antonio, the debt has caught up. The boomtown is learning that growth itself can become a form of collapse. But what's happening here is only the beginning. Because farther east, in a city that once glittered with casinos and tourism dollars, the wave of defaults has turned into something darker: desperation on the coast. Some collapses are sudden, others just never end. Atlantic City knows both. Once called the playground of America, this small strip of casinos and oceanfront streets was supposed to symbolize endless renewal, the place that always came back. But in 2025, even the comeback story has collapsed. According to Atom's third quarter data, 1 in every 490 homes in Atlantic City has entered foreclosure, the highest rate in the entire Northeast. In a city of fewer than 40,000 people, that number is staggering. It means nearly every block has a boarded door, an unpaid mortgage, or a dream that's run out of luck. The casinos still glow at night, but they hide the quiet truth. Tourism revenue is falling, property values are falling, and the hope that Atlantic City could reinvent itself again is falling fastest of all. The causes are painfully familiar: high taxes, rising insurance costs, and a dwindling year-round population. But the underlying force is deeper: exhaustion. After decades of decline, reinvention, and recession, the city has simply run out of margin to fail again. Developers who promised revitalization have left projects half-finished. Condominium towers stand dark against the shoreline, victims of cost overruns and investor flight. Even the local government, burdened by debt and shrinking tax revenue, is struggling to maintain basic services. Foreclosure filings here have surged 45% year over year, and the pipeline shows no sign of slowing. For every home sold, 2 more slip into default. And with a national economy tightening, the buyer's Atlantic City depends on retirees, remote workers, and second home investors are disappearing. The city's collapse feels symbolic, not just financial, but emotional. It's what happens when optimism itself becomes too expensive to afford. Every boarded casino entrance, every silent streetlight along Pacific Avenue tells the same story. A place that bet everything on the future and lost. But in that silence, Atlantic City reveals something larger about the country. It shows what happens when short-term profit replaces long-term vision, when every boom ends in bankruptcy, and when the American dream runs out of places to move. Because this isn't just one city's story, it's a mirror held up to them all. 10 cities, 10 warnings. From Columbia's quiet suburbs to Atlantic City's empty boardwalk, the signs are everywhere, cracks spreading through the foundation of an economy built on borrowed time. Each foreclosure is more than a number. It's a map of how fragile the American dream has become, from the factories that fell silent, to the suburbs that grew too fast, to the coasts that can no longer hold the tide. But this story doesn't end here. Because these cities aren't collapsing in isolation. They're threads of the same unraveling fabric. And if you look closely, you can see it pulling across the nation. Tax bases hollowing, wages stalling, optimism draining. The question isn't which city falls next. It's how much longer the system holding them together can survive. In the next episode, we'll uncover the deeper pattern behind these collapses, the cycle that's rewriting the future of every American town. Subscribe before the next one drops, because the collapse is no longer coming. It's already here.